She
There,
grabbed
much
my
better.
sleeve
You
in
needed
front
the
of
ventilation.
400 guests.
Claudia,
I heard the fabric
stop.
rip.
My dress.
I felt 400 pairs of eyes watching me fall apart. My stepmother smiled and said, "Someone get her a tablecloth, something in her budget." Everyone laughed.
If anyone finds
My
out I was the one
ex-husband
who
joined
cut the
in.
brakes on his car, I'm
"Classic
finished.
Vivian," he said, always falling apart. Security
This
guards
is a
moved
mistake.
toward
Let
me.
go of me.
They were going to
I
drag
haven't
me
done
out of my own
anything.
brother's wedding like I
Daniel,
was
help
trash.
me.
But here's what my stepmother did not know.
Oh, baby,
I was
missed
recording
you so
everything.
much.
And the man standing next to me, the
I
one
missed
she
you too,
dismissed as
Mommy.
nobody special, he owned every single company that made her precious wedding possible. By midnight, she would be in handcuffs. My son would be back in my arms, and the woman who spent 20 years trying to destroy me would watch her entire empire burn to the ground. My name is Vivian, and this is the story of how the worst night of my life became my greatest victory. Value statement. Before we begin, let me tell you why this story matters. This is not just entertainment. This is a survival guide for every woman who has ever been gaslit, manipulated, or made to feel worthless by someone who is supposed to love her. You will learn how to protect yourself when the system fails you, how to gather evidence when no one believes you, and most importantly, how to rebuild your life when everything has been taken away. If you have ever felt invisible, this story will remind you of your power. Meaning of the story. The message is simple, but life-changing. Your silence is not weakness. It is preparation. The people who try to break you are betting that you will stay quiet forever. They are betting that shame will keep you small. Prove them wrong, not with revenge, not with anger, but with truth, with resilience, with a life so full of purpose that you forget they ever existed. That is the real victory. My stepmother ripped my dress in front of 400 guests. She thought she was destroying me. She did not know I was recording everything. And she definitely did not know that by midnight, I would have evidence of her crimes, my son back in my arms, and her entire empire burning to the ground. My name is Vivian Carter, and this is how I turned the worst night of my life into the best revenge I never planned. Before I tell you how humiliation became liberation, you need to understand something. I did not marry a billionaire because I wanted money. I married Daniel Westbrook because he was the first man who ever looked at me like I was already enough. He never told me about his wealth. I never asked about his past. We built something real on honesty and coffee dates and late-night conversations about nothing and everything. But the woman who raised me after my mother died, Claudia Reynolds, believed money was the only thing that mattered, and she spent 20 years making sure I knew I would never have enough of it to deserve love. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I was 4 months pregnant, sitting in my small kitchen, video calling my 8-year-old son, Tommy. He lived with his father now. My ex-husband, Marcus, had won custody 2 years ago, and I only got calls twice a week. Supervised calls, like I was some kind of criminal instead of a mother who loved her child. Tommy's face filled my phone screen, all gap-toothed smile and messy brown hair. "Mommy," he whispered, looking over his shoulder, "Daddy's girlfriend is nice. She asks lots of questions about Daddy's work." My heart clenched. "What kind of questions, baby?" "About money stuff. She writes things down." Before I could ask more, Marcus's voice boomed in the background. "Tommy, time's up." The screen went dark. 2 minutes, that was all I got with my own son. I sat there for a long moment, hand pressed against my growing belly, wondering how my life had become a series of supervised moments with the people I loved most. That was when Daniel walked in with the mail. He was already dressed for work, all tailored suit and quiet confidence, but he stopped when he saw my face. "What happened?" "Nothing new." I forced a smile. "Just missing Tommy." Daniel set down the stack of envelopes and pulled me into his arms. He smelled like cedar and safety. We will get him back, Vivian. I promise you that. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. But I had learned a long time ago that promises were just words people used to make themselves feel better about things they could not control. Daniel released me and started sorting through the mail. Bill, Bill junk, Bill and... He paused, holding up a cream-colored envelope. His jaw tightened. This is interesting. I knew that envelope. I knew that handwriting. Elegant, cold, unmistakable. Claudia. Daniel handed it to me without a word. I turned it over, my fingers trembling slightly as I broke the seal. You are cordially invited to celebrate the marriage of Ethan Reynolds and Charlotte Davis. Ethan, my stepbrother, the golden child who could do no wrong while I was treated like dirt beneath Claudia's designer heels. At the bottom of the invitation, in neat cursive letters, was a handwritten note. Do try to wear something appropriate this time. We would hate for you to embarrass the family again. Daniel read it over my shoulder. His voice went flat. We are not going. I stared at the words, feeling that old familiar shame creeping up my spine. The same shame I had felt for 20 years under Claudia's roof. The same shame that made me small, made me quiet, made me invisible. But something else stirred too. Something that felt like defiance. Ethan was always kind to me, I said slowly. He was the only one who ever stood up for me, even when it cost him. Daniel's hand found mine. Vivian, these people have done nothing but hurt you. Why give them another chance? I looked up at him, and I could see the protectiveness in his eyes, the love, the frustration at watching someone he cared about walk toward pain. Because if I don't go, she wins again. I squeezed his fingers. I am tired of letting her win. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Then we go together. He pulled me close, pressing a kiss to my forehead. You know what my therapist taught me? When someone tries to make you feel small, ask yourself, would I let them talk to my child this way? If the answer is no, do not let them talk to you that way either. I smiled despite myself. Your therapist sounds smart. He chuckled. She charges enough to be smart. Besides, I have met oil tycoons, hostile boards, and a very angry Swedish investor. How bad can one stepmother be? The Swedish investor did not have a Pinterest board dedicated to elegant ways to ruin a life. Daniel's eyebrows shot up. She has a Pinterest board? With subcategories? He laughed, but I could see the worry beneath it. Whatever you face there, you will not face it alone. I spent the next 3 days preparing. I bought a new dress, soft peach with delicate lace sleeves. It was not expensive, but it was beautiful. It was me. The night before we left, I was packing when I found an old photograph of my mother. She had died when I was 7, and sometimes her face felt like a dream. I could not quite remember. I wish you were here, Mom, I whispered. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. The text made my blood run cold. She is not who she says she is. Check the blue folder. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Who sent this? What blue folder? I almost showed Daniel. Almost. But something stopped me. A voice in my head that said, this is your fight. Your truth to uncover. I deleted the text and finished packing. I had no idea that message would change everything. The Reynolds estate looked exactly like I remembered. White marble floors that echoed with judgment, fountains that never stopped running, as if even the water was showing off. Chandeliers that cost more than most people's houses. 400 guests had been invited to celebrate Ethan's wedding. 400 witnesses to whatever Claudia had planned, because I knew she had something planned. Claudia always had something planned. Daniel helped me out of the car, his hand steady on my lower back. I touched my small baby bump, grounding myself in the life growing inside me. This child would never know the kind of cruelty I had survived. I would make sure of it. You ready? Daniel asked quietly. No, I admitted, but I am going anyway. He smiled. That is my girl. We walked up the grand staircase together, and I felt every eye turn toward us. Not in welcome, in curiosity, like they were wondering who had let the family embarrassment through the door. Claudia stood at the top of the stairs, dripping in diamonds, her silver hair pulled into a perfect twist. She was 63 years old and looked 50, thanks to the best surgeons money could buy. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Vivian. Her voice carried across the marble foyer. You actually came? I was not sure you would have the courage. That last word hung in the air. Courage. As if showing up to my own brother's wedding required bravery. As if my presence was an act of war, rather than love. I forced my shoulders back. It is Ethan's day. I came for him. Claudia's eyes slid to Daniel, scanning him from head to toe like a predator assessing prey. And this must be your husband. She let the word drip with condescension. I must say, you have done better than I expected. Daniel started to speak, but I squeezed his hand. Not yet. Claudia leaned in close, her perfume overwhelming, her voice dropping to a whisper only I could hear. I see you are pregnant again. Let us hope you keep this one. Unlike your marriage. The words hit me like a physical blow. I felt Daniel tense beside me, but he did not hear what she said. Only I did. Only I was meant to. I swallowed hard and walked past her without responding. The ceremony was scheduled to begin in an hour. I used the time to find my stepbrother. Ethan looked handsome in his tuxedo, nervous and happy and everything a groom should be. When he saw me, his face lit up with genuine warmth. Vivian, he pulled me into a tight hug. I am so glad you came. I was worried you would not. I would not miss it for the world. He pulled back, studying my face. I am sorry about everything. Mother has been worse lately. Secretive. Meeting with lawyers constantly. That caught my attention. Lawyers? For what? He shrugged, but I could see the concern in his eyes. I do not know. She will not tell me. But something is going on. Before I could respond, Charlotte appeared. Ethan's bride was beautiful and kind, with none of the coldness I had come to associate with this family. She hugged me warmly. Thank you for being here, Vivian. Ethan talks about you all the time. I feel like I already know you. I smiled, and for a moment, I let myself believe that maybe this wedding could be a new beginning. Maybe things could be different. Then I saw him, Marcus Webb, my ex-husband, standing across the room like he belonged there. And on his arm was a young woman I did not recognize. Blonde, beautiful, maybe 26 years old. She was watching the room with sharp eyes that seemed to catalog everything. Daniel followed my gaze. Is that my ex-husband? I whispered. Yes. What is he doing here? I do not know. Marcus spotted me at the same moment. His face spread into that charming smile I had once loved and learned to hate. He walked toward us, the blonde woman keeping pace. Vivian. He said my name like it was a private joke. Looking healthy. Marcus, I said flatly. I was not expecting to see you here. Charlotte's family and mine go way back. He shrugged. Besides, I wanted to check on you, make sure you were doing all right. His concern was as fake as his smile. I knew him too well to believe otherwise. The blonde woman extended her hand. I am Jessica. Marcus has told me so much about you. Something in her eyes made me pause. They were too sharp, too watchful for a simple girlfriend. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket. Oh, I almost forgot. Tommy wanted me to give you this. He handed me a piece of paper, a crayon drawing. My heart stopped. The drawing showed a family, a man, a woman, and a little boy. At the bottom, in Tommy's careful handwriting, were the words, "My family, Marcus, Jessica, Tommy." No Vivian. Marcus's voice dripped with mock sympathy. Kids are honest, are they not? He walked away, leaving me holding the evidence that my own son was forgetting me. Daniel's arm wrapped around my shoulders. "Vivian, he is trying to hurt you. That is all this is." I nodded, but I could not speak, could not breathe. A voice cut through my spiral. "Honey, you look like you swallowed a lemon," and the lemon's mother-in-law. I turned to find an older woman in a catering uniform. She was black, probably in her late 60s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense expression. "That obvious?" I managed. "Baby, I have worked 200 weddings. I can spot family drama faster than an open bar spots an alcoholic uncle." She pressed a cookie into my hand. "Eat. Whatever is coming, face it with blood sugar." I almost laughed. "Thank you. I am Vivian. Ruth Peterson." She winked. "And let me tell you something about that woman on the stairs." She sent back shrimp 4 times because it was not apologetic enough. "Anyone who fights her is my people." "Apologetic shrimp?" Daniel asked, bewildered. "Do not ask. Just know I added extra garlic to her plate tonight." I bit into the cookie, feeling something loosen in my chest. Ruth. I would remember that name. As the ceremony began, I took my seat beside Daniel and tried to focus on the joy of the moment. Ethan and Charlotte exchanging vows. 2 people promising forever, but I could feel Claudia's eyes on me the entire time, watching, waiting. Jessica appeared beside me during the processional, her voice barely a whisper. "Things are not always what they seem," she said, and then she was gone. I did not understand what she meant. I would, soon. The ceremony was beautiful. Ethan and Charlotte stood beneath an arch of white roses, promising to love each other through everything life would throw at them. Charlotte cried during her vows. Ethan's voice cracked when he said, "I do." I found myself thinking about my own wedding to Marcus, the promises he made, the lies beneath them. Then I thought about Daniel, the quiet courthouse ceremony, the silver ring, his words. "You do not need the world to see your worth. You just need to see it yourself." 2 marriages, 2 completely different men. One taught me what love was not. The other was still teaching me what it could be. After the vows, Claudia orchestrated the family photographs like a general commanding troops. She positioned everyone with surgical precision. "Vivian, stand in the back," her voice carried. "You are too visible." Daniel stepped forward. "She stands with the family, or we leave." For a moment, something flickered in Claudia's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or calculation. She was not used to being challenged. Fine. Her smile never wavered. But keep the pregnant belly angled away. It is distracting. I took my place, cheeks burning, and endured the photographer's instructions. Smile. Tilt your head. Perfect. Nothing about this was perfect. After the photos, I excused myself to the restroom. I needed a moment alone, a moment to breathe. The bathroom was marble and gold, like everything else in this house. I splashed water on my face and stared at my reflection. "You can do this," I whispered. "A few more hours, and you never have to see her again." A soft sound made me turn. Someone had slipped an envelope under the door. My heart stopped. It was a blue folder. I picked it up with trembling hands and opened it. Inside were financial documents, legal papers. My mother's name was on them. A trust fund, established by my mother before she died, worth millions. I had never known it existed. Attached to the documents was a handwritten note. "Claudia stole your inheritance. Proof is at the house. 3rd floor study. Tonight." I read the words 3 times. 4 times. My mother had left me money. Money Claudia had somehow stolen, hidden, All these years of being told I was worthless, that I had nothing, that I should be grateful for scraps. Lies. All of it. I tucked the folder into my purse and walked back to the reception with new purpose. Daniel found me immediately. You look different. I feel different. I tried to keep my voice steady. I think I understand why Claudia has been meeting with lawyers. What do you mean? Later, I promised. When we are alone, he nodded, trusting me. That trust meant everything. The reception was in full swing by then. Champagne flowed, music played, guests laughed and danced and celebrated. I almost let myself relax, almost let myself believe the worst was over. You seem lighter, Daniel said, pulling me onto the dance floor. Maybe everything will be okay. He smiled and spun me gently, mindful of my belly. From your lips to God's ears. We danced through one song, then two. The world narrowed to just us, just this moment, and for a few precious minutes, I forgot where I was. Then the music stopped. Claudia was at the microphone. If I could have everyone's attention, she said, her voice carrying through the hall. I would like to make a toast to my beautiful son and his bride. The crowd gathered. Champagne glasses were raised. Claudia spoke about family, about legacy, about the importance of maintaining appearances at all costs. And let us welcome all family tonight, she said, her eyes finding mine across the room, even those who have struggled. Scattered laughter. My cheeks burned, but I held my ground. Daniel's hand found mine under the table. His grip was firm, steady. The toast ended. Applause filled the room, and Claudia descended from the stage with a smile that promised pain. Something was coming. I just did not know what yet. The photographer called for one final family portrait. A casual one this time, he said. By the grand staircase, Claudia positioned us again, and I found myself at the edge of the frame, as far from the center as possible. Vivian, your dress is wrinkling oddly. Claudia walked toward me. Come here. Let me fix it. I should have known. I should have seen it coming. But some part of me, some foolish, hopeful part, still believed that maybe she could change. Maybe she could be kind. She reached for my sleeve, supposedly adjusting the lace. Then she pulled. The fabric ripped clean off my shoulder, exposing my skin to 400 gasping guests. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. Then Claudia's voice rang out, dripping with false concern. Oh no. Oh, Vivian, I am so sorry. She turned to the crowd, shaking her head in mock dismay. See, everyone? This is what happens when you buy cheap fabric. Laughter rippled through the room. Not from everyone, but enough. Enough to make me feel exactly as small as she wanted me to feel. Someone get her a napkin, Claudia continued. Or a tablecloth. Something in her budget. I stood frozen. Torn dress, exposed arm, 400 pairs of eyes watching me crumble. Marcus appeared from nowhere, smiling that cruel smile. Classic Vivian, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Always falling apart at important moments. Remember our wedding? She tripped, walking down the aisle. More laughter, more shame. I could not speak, could not move, could not breathe. Claudia leaned close, her whisper sharp as broken glass. Perhaps you should leave. You are upsetting the bride. Charlotte stepped forward. I am not... Security! Claudia called, cutting her off. 2 guards in black suits materialized from the crowd. They were moving toward me, actually moving toward me, like I was some kind of threat that needed to be removed. This is not happening, I thought. This cannot be happening. Daniel stepped between me and the guards. His voice was low, but carried. You are not touching her. Claudia's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I said no. Daniel's tone was calm in a way that scared me. The kind of calm that came before a storm. But he did not reveal himself. Did not use his power, or his money, or his name. He just took off his jacket and wrapped it around my shoulders, hiding the torn fabric. "You do not have to say anything right now," he said quietly, "but you do not have to leave either. This is your choice." His words cut through the fog of shame. This is your choice. My whole life, I had let other people make choices for me. My father, who never defended me, Claudia, who controlled everything, Marcus, who lied and manipulated until I did not know what was real anymore. But Daniel was right. This moment was mine. I straightened my spine, lifted my chin, looked directly at Claudia. "I will stay." Claudia blinked. "Excuse me?" I said I will stay. My voice came out stronger than I expected. "Unless you want to physically drag a pregnant woman out of here in front of 400 witnesses with phones." Silence fell over the room. Real silence. The kind that meant everyone was listening. Claudia's eye twitched. A tiny thing, barely noticeable, but I noticed. I had spent 20 years learning to read her tells. She was not used to being challenged. Not in her own house. Not in front of her own guests. "Fine," she said at last. "Stay. Make a fool of yourself. You always do." She turned and walked away, her friends trailing behind her, like a flock of well-dressed vultures. And I stayed. I stayed with my torn dress and my racing heart, and my husband's jacket around my shoulders. I stayed because leaving would have meant she won. Daniel pulled me into a quiet corner. "You were incredible," he said. I was terrified. That is what made it incredible. Ruth appeared with 2 glasses of champagne. I heard what happened. "That woman is a piece of work. You do not know the half of it," I said. Ruth studied me with those wise eyes. "Something tells me I'm about to find out." And she was right. Because what I found in that blue folder had changed everything. Tonight, I would find the proof. Tonight, I would finally have ammunition against the woman who had made my life a living hell. I just had to survive until midnight. I found Jessica in the garden, sitting alone on a stone bench beneath a canopy of fairy lights. She was scrolling through her phone, but she looked up when she heard my footsteps. "I was wondering when you would find me," she said. "Who are you?" I asked. "Really?" She studied me for a long moment. Then she reached into her clutch and pulled out a press badge. "Jessica Lane, investigative journalist with the Tribune. I have been undercover for 6 months." The ground seemed to shift beneath my feet. "Undercover? With Marcus?" She nodded. "Your ex-husband is laundering money through a network of shell companies. We have been building a case against him, but we need evidence. Physical documents. Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think your stepmother is involved." She hesitated. "The folder you received tonight. I sent it." "You?" I thought. I did not know what I thought. "Why help me?" Jessica's expression hardened. "Because Marcus destroyed my sister's life too. Different name, same playbook. She trusted him. He took everything, and then he made sure the courts believed his lies over hers." Something cold settled in my chest. He has done this before. "My sister lost custody of her kids," Jessica continued. "She lost her house, her savings, everything. By the time she realized what was happening, it was too late." Her voice cracked. "She took her own life 2 years ago. Jessica, I'm so sorry." She wiped her eyes quickly. "Do not be sorry. Help me bring him down. That is all I want." I was silent for a moment, processing everything. Marcus, Claudia, a conspiracy that stretched back further than I had ever imagined. "The documents in the folder," I said slowly. "They mentioned a 3rd-floor study. That is where Claudia keeps everything. Financial records, communication logs, proof of what they have done." She looked at me intently. "I need to get in there tonight." I corrected her. "We need to get in there." A smile flickered across her face. I was hoping you would say that. We returned to the reception separately to avoid suspicion. Daniel was waiting for me, worry etched across his features. Where have you been? I will explain everything, I promised, but I need your help. I told him about Jessica, about the folder, about what I suspected was hidden in Claudia's study. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. This is dangerous, Vivian. I know. If she catches you, she will not. I took his hands. Daniel, this is my chance. My chance to prove what she did to my mother. My chance to get Tommy back. Do you understand? He searched my face. Then he nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? Cover for me. If anyone asks where I am, say I went to rest. The pregnancy is tiring me out, and if something goes wrong, then I will need you to create a distraction. What kind of distraction? I do not know yet, but I trust you to figure it out. He pulled me close, pressing his forehead against mine. Be careful. Please, I will. Ruth appeared as if summoned by fate. I heard you two whispering. What is the plan? Daniel looked at her sideways. Are you always this nosy? Honey, I was a family court judge for 30 years before I retired. Nosiness is basically a professional requirement. She crossed her arms. Now tell me what is happening. So I did. I told her everything. When I finished, Ruth pulled a business card from her apron pocket. My nephew is a forensic accountant. You find those documents, you call him Monday morning. He will know exactly what to do with them. Why are you helping me? I asked. You are the caterer. Ruth smiled. Because that woman sent back shrimp 4 times. Because I watched her humiliate you in front of everyone. And because some battles are worth fighting, even if they are not your own. Daniel excused himself to get drinks, and Ruth fixed me with a serious look. Listen to me carefully. In any confrontation, let them talk. The more they gloat, the more they confess. If Claudia catches you tonight, do not argue. Do not beg. Just let her think she is winning. And then you use whatever she says against her. The dancing started at 9, the first waltz, the father-daughter dance, all the rituals of celebration. At 9:30, I slipped away from the reception and headed for the 3rd floor. By midnight, I thought, I will have everything I need. I had no idea what I would actually find. The 3rd floor of the Reynolds estate was silent as a tomb. The music from below faded to a distant hum as I climbed the stairs, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure someone would hear it. The study was at the end of a long hallway, behind a heavy oak door. Locked, of course. But I had spent 5 years as a corporate lawyer before my marriage to Marcus. I knew how to pick a lock. I pulled a hairpin from my updo and went to work. 30 seconds later, the mechanism clicked. The study was exactly what I expected. Dark wood, leather furniture, a massive desk covered in papers, and along one wall, a row of filing cabinets. I started with the first drawer. Financial records, bank statements, nothing unusual. The second drawer was more promising. Documents relating to my mother's estate. I photographed each page, my phone's flash illuminating the darkness. And then I found it. A file labeled Partnership Agreement. Marcus Webb. My hands shook as I opened it. The documents inside made my blood run cold. Claudia and Marcus had been business partners for years. Years. The divorce, the custody battle, everything I had suffered, it was all connected. There was a handwritten note in Claudia's elegant script. Keep her distracted during proceedings. I will handle the rest. She had fed him information, my legal strategy, my weaknesses, my fears. Everything I had confided in my lawyer had somehow made its way to Marcus. I felt sick, but it got worse. In the next cabinet, I found a file labeled Tommy Carter. Custody arrangement. Medical records, Therapy notes, reports claiming I was mentally unstable, that I was a danger to my own child. All fabricated, all lies. And there was more, a detailed plan for the future. Once we establish full custody of the boy, Claudia had written, we control the trust. As his guardians, all decisions regarding the estate fall to us. They did not want Tommy. They wanted my mother's money, the money that should have been mine, the money they had already stolen once. And the new baby? That was Marcus's handwriting. Same playbook. She is too weak to fight. They were planning to take both my children. I sank to the floor, the documents scattering around me. 20 years of cruelty, and I had never understood the full scope of it. This was not just about making me feel small. This was systematic destruction. They wanted to erase me completely. A sob escaped my throat before I could stop it. Why? I whispered to the empty room. Why does everyone want to destroy me? The door opened. Claudia stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the hall light. Behind her were Marcus and 2 security guards. Oh, Vivian. Her smile was triumphant. You really are predictable. I scrambled to my feet, but there was nowhere to go. The window was 3 stories up. The door was blocked. Claudia strolled into the room like she owned it, which, I suppose, she did. Did you really think I would not have cameras in my own study? She gestured to a small device in the corner of the ceiling. I have been watching you since you walked in. Marcus stepped forward, his expression smug. This is perfect. Trespassing. Theft of private documents. And look at her, shaking, crying. Perfect evidence for the custody hearing. Claudia pulled out her phone and began recording. Smile for the judge, sweetheart. This is going to be Exhibit A. I should have been terrified. I was terrified, but somewhere beneath the fear, a cold clarity was taking hold. They did not know about my phone. They did not know I had been recording too, that every document I had photographed was already uploaded to the cloud. They did not know about the USB drive with their recorded conversation, tucked safely in my bra. They thought they had won. Let them think it. The door opened again, and my heart sank even further. My father stood there, gray and broken, looking between his wife and his daughter. Harold, finally. Claudia's voice dripped with satisfaction. See what your daughter has done? Dad, I whispered. Please. He looked at me, looked at the papers scattered on the floor, looked at the triumphant smile on Claudia's face. And then he turned and walked away. The last person who might have defended me. Gone. We will handle this from here, Marcus said to the guards. Mental health emergency. She needs to be evaluated. They were going to have me committed. Tonight. If I went with them, I would lose everything. My children, my freedom, my life. I screamed for Daniel, but the guards were already pulling me toward the door, and then everything went dark. The guards had a firm grip on my arms, but they had not thought to take my phone. Why would they? I was just a hysterical woman in a torn dress. No threat at all. That was their first mistake. Claudia was still recording, narrating my breakdown for the camera like she was directing a documentary. As you can see, Vivian is clearly unstable. She broke into my private study, scattered confidential documents, and now she is resisting assistance. This is exactly the behavior we warned the court about. I forced myself to stop struggling. Ruth's words echoed in my mind. Let them talk. The more they gloat, the more they confess. So I went limp, let my body sag, made myself look defeated. Claudia's smile widened. Finally accepting reality, are we? Good. It is easier this way. Why? I asked, my voice small. Why do you hate me so much? She lowered her phone slightly, savoring the moment. Hate you? Oh, Vivian. I do not hate you. I simply find you inconvenient. Your mother left everything to you. Everything. And your father was too stupid to contest it. She stepped closer, her perfume overwhelming. Do you know how humiliating it was? Coming into this family with nothing while a 7-year-old held all the cards? I never knew about the trust. Of course you did not. I made sure of that. She laughed softly. It was almost too easy. A few forged signatures, some creative accounting, kimikyong, and suddenly the money was exactly where it belonged. You stole from a child. I took what should have been mine. Her eyes hardened. And when you married Marcus, I saw an opportunity, a way to remove you permanently without getting my hands dirty. Marcus chuckled from behind her. She reached out to me, right after our wedding, said she had a proposition. The whole thing, I breathed. Our entire marriage was business, he finished. Nothing personal. The guard shifted impatiently. Ma'am, we should go. Yes, yes. Claudia waved a hand. Take her out the service entrance. I do not want anyone seeing her leave. They started moving me toward the door, and then chaos erupted. Ruth burst into the room holding a fire extinguisher. Kitchen emergency, she shouted. Everyone needs to evacuate the 3rd floor immediately. Fire code. There was no fire, but the guards did not know that. They hesitated, looking to Claudia for direction. That was all I needed. I twisted free and ran. Stop her, Claudia screamed. But I was already through the door, already sprinting down the hallway, already flying down the stairs toward the one place I knew I could make a difference. The reception hall. 400 guests were still dancing, still celebrating, still blissfully unaware of the drama unfolding above them. The band was taking a break. The microphone was on its stand, unattended. I grabbed it. Everyone, my voice echoed through the hall. Can I have your attention? The music died. 400 faces turned toward me, toward my torn dress and wild eyes and trembling hands. Claudia appeared at the top of the staircase. Do not you dare, she hissed, but I was done being silent. My name is Vivian Carter, I said into the microphone. Most of you know me as the family embarrassment. The stepchild Claudia wishes did not exist. She ripped my dress tonight. You all saw it. But here is what you did not see. I held up my phone. Claudia's recorded voice filled the hall. Once we get full custody of Tommy. Gasps rippled through the crowd. That is taken out of context, Claudia shouted. Is it? I pressed play again, her voice clear and damning. I took what should have been mine. A few forged signatures, some creative accounting, and suddenly the money was exactly where it belonged. The room went absolutely silent. Claudia's face drained of color. That was a private conversation. You had no right. I have every right. My voice did not waver. You stole my inheritance. You conspired with my ex-husband to take my children. You have spent 20 years trying to destroy me. I looked out at the sea of shocked faces. 400 witnesses. 400 phones recording. You spent 20 years trying to make me invisible, I said. Tonight, everyone sees exactly who you are. The silence that followed buried my words was deafening. 400 people stood frozen. Champagne glasses halfway to lips, mouths open, phones raised. Claudia recovered first. She descended the staircase slowly, deliberately, her face arranged into an expression of wounded dignity. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice carrying, this is exactly what I was afraid of. My stepdaughter is clearly having a mental health episode. Please let us not. I pressed play again, Marcus's voice this time. The whole thing was business, nothing personal. Then Claudia. He reached out to me right after our wedding, said she had a proposition. The murmuring in the crowd grew louder. People were connecting dots, understanding what had been done. Ethan stepped forward, his face ashen. Mother? What is this? Claudia tried to smile. Darling, this is just Vivian being dramatic. You know how she... Charlotte cut her off. Is it true? Did you steal from her? Do not be ridiculous. Claudia's laugh was brittle. These are clearly fabricated. I have the original documents, I said. Photographed and uploaded before you found me. My voice was steady now. Bank records, partnership agreements, the custody fabrication file. All of it. Marcus tried to slip toward the exit. Jessica stepped into his path. Marcus Webb, I am with the Tribune. She held up her press badge. Care to comment on the money laundering allegations? His face went white. I have been recording everything for 6 months. She smiled sweetly. You really should be more careful about who you bring to weddings. The crowd parted as 2 police officers entered the reception hall. Ruth had called them earlier, it turned out. She had known exactly how this night would unfold. Claudia Reynolds? One of the officers stepped forward. Marcus Webb, we have some questions for you. This is outrageous, Claudia sputtered. I am the mother of the groom. You cannot just... We can, actually. The officer was unmoved. We have received substantial evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. You are both going to need to come with us. As the officers approached, my father finally appeared from wherever he had been hiding. Claudia looked at him desperately. Harold, do something. He looked at her, then at me, then at the scattered crowd of guests who were all watching this family implode in real time. Vivian, he said slowly. I did not know. All these years, I thought. He trailed off, pain etched across his features. Your mother made me promise to protect you. I failed. Yes, I said quietly. You did. He flinched like I had struck him, but I was not done. You let her treat me like garbage for 20 years. You watched and said nothing. You chose her over me, every single time. I took a breath. I am not ready to forgive you. I do not know if I ever will be. Tears ran down his face. I understand, but I am not going to destroy you either. I met his eyes. That is what makes me different from the woman you married. The officers led Claudia and Marcus away. Claudia was shouting about lawyers and lawsuits and how we would all regret this. Marcus was silent, calculating, already planning his next move. But for once, I did not care what they were planning. Daniel found me in the chaos and pulled me into his arms. You did it, he said against my hair. You actually did it. I could not have done it alone. He pulled back to look at my face. You did the hard part. You stood up. You spoke the truth. That took more courage than anything I could have done. Ruth appeared beside us, slightly out of breath but grinning widely. That woman, she said, shaking her head, complained about the shrimp temperature. Karma runs hot and cold, honey. I laughed. Actually laughed. The first real laugh in what felt like years. The reception was over, of course. Charlotte was in tears. Ethan was trying to salvage what remained of his wedding day. Guests were leaving in waves, whispering to each other about what they had witnessed. But I stayed for one more moment. I found Jessica by the door. Thank you, I said, for everything. Do not thank me yet. She smiled. The article drops tomorrow, front page. What happens now? Now you rebuild. She squeezed my hand. And you make sure Tommy knows his mother fought for him. I thought about my son, his crayon drawing, my family, with me erased from it. Not anymore. He is going to know the truth, I said, all of it, and he is going to come home. The next month passed in a blur of lawyers and court dates and news coverage. Jessica's article was everything she had promised and more. It detailed the years of fraud, the stolen inheritance, the custody manipulation. It named names and provided evidence and left no room for doubt. Claudia and Marcus were arrested. Bail was set at $2 million for Claudia, $3 million for Marcus. Neither of them could pay it. It turned out that most of their wealth was stolen money, and once the investigation began, the house of cards collapsed entirely. I watched the news coverage from our apartment, Daniel's arm around my shoulders. Claudia Reynolds, once a prominent socialite, now faces charges of embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy, the anchor reported. Her alleged accomplice, Marcus Webb, faces additional charges of money laundering and tax evasion. The camera showed Claudia being led into a courtroom in handcuffs. Her perfect hair was disheveled. Her designer clothes had been replaced by an orange jumpsuit. She looked small, ordinary, powerless. I felt nothing. I thought I would feel triumphant, I told Daniel, or vindicated. But I just feel empty. He kissed my forehead. That is because revenge was never really what you wanted. What did I want? To be free. He looked at me with those steady eyes. And now you are. The custody hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. With Marcus facing federal charges and unable to post bail, the outcome was almost a foregone conclusion. But I still had to testify. I still had to face a judge and explain why my son should come home to me. Ruth's nephew, the forensic accountant, helped me prepare. He walked me through the financial evidence, showed me how to explain the fabricated therapy notes, taught me how to stay calm under cross-examination. Remember, he said, the truth is on your side. Just tell it simply and clearly. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Tommy was not there, of course. He was with a temporary guardian while the hearing proceeded, but I could feel him somehow, his gap-toothed smile, his messy hair, his small voice asking when he could see Mommy again. Soon, baby, I thought. So soon. My lawyer presented the evidence methodically. The stolen documents from Claudia's study, the partnership agreement between her and Marcus, the fabricated medical records, the recorded conversations. The judge listened without expression. She was an older woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. When it was my turn to testify, I told the truth. All of it. The years of abuse, the manipulation, the desperation of losing my child to a man who saw him as a pawn. I am not perfect, I said. At the end, I have made mistakes, but I love my son more than anything in this world, and I have spent 2 years fighting to bring him home. The judge was quiet for a long moment. Mrs. Carter, she said finally, I have reviewed all the evidence presented. It is clear to me that your custody arrangement was obtained through fraudulent means and that the reports used to discredit you were fabricated. I held my breath. I am granting you full custody of Thomas Carter, effective immediately. The words did not register at first. I just sat there, frozen, unable to process what I had heard. Daniel squeezed my hand. Vivian, you won. The tears came then, hot and fast and unstoppable. 2 years of grief and fear and fighting, all of it releasing at once. I won. Tommy was coming home. The social worker brought him to our apartment that evening. When the door opened and I saw his face, I dropped to my knees. Mommy? I held out my arms and he ran into them. I am here, baby. I sobbed into his hair. I am here, and I am never letting go again. He pulled back to look at my face, his small fingers wiping my tears. Why are you crying? Because I am happy, I kissed his forehead. Because you are home. He hugged me tighter. I missed you, Mommy. I missed you too, more than you will ever know. Daniel joined us on the floor, wrapping his arms around both of us. Welcome home, Tommy, he said softly. Tommy looked up at him with those big, trusting eyes. Are you my new daddy? Daniel glanced at me, uncertain. He is your stepdad, I said gently, and he loves you very much. Tommy considered this. Okay. He snuggled closer. Can we have pizza for dinner? I laughed through my tears. We can have whatever you want. That night, after Tommy was asleep in his new room, I stood on the balcony looking out at the city. The lights sparkled like earthbound stars. Daniel came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my growing belly. How do you feel? I thought about the question. Really thought about it. Like myself, I said finally. For the first time in years, he rested his chin on my shoulder. What changed? Everything. I leaned back into his warmth. I spent so long believing what they told me, that I was worthless, that I did not deserve love, that I would always be the family disappointment. And now I know the truth. I turned to face him. I was never the problem. They were. He smiled that quiet smile I loved so much. You figured that out yourself, you know. I just had a front row seat. You did more than watch. I touched his face. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself. Always, he said. Always. 6 months after the wedding, that changed everything. I stood in front of a crowd of reporters and well-wishers outside a renovated brownstone in the heart of the city. A banner hung above the door. Grace House, a refuge for women and children, named after my mother, built with my inheritance, dedicated to every woman who had ever been told she was not enough. I cut the ribbon with Tommy standing on one side and Daniel on the other, our baby daughter sleeping peacefully in a carrier against my chest. We named her Grace, too. The cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions, and I smiled because for the first time in my life, I had something to say. This house, I said into the microphones, is for every woman who has been made to feel invisible, every woman who has lost her children to an unjust system, every woman who has been told that money and power matter more than truth. I looked at Tommy, who was waving at the cameras with enthusiasm. I lost custody of my son to a man who saw him as a bargaining chip. I spent 2 years fighting to bring him home, and I won. Not because I had power or money or connections, but because I refused to give up. The crowd was silent, listening. Claudia Reynolds tried to destroy me. She stole my inheritance. She conspired with my ex-husband. She ripped my dress in front of 400 people and tried to have me committed. I paused, remembering that night, the fear, the shame, the moment I grabbed the microphone and decided I was done being silent. But she made one mistake, I continued. She underestimated me. She thought I would crumble. She thought I would run away and never come back. I smiled. She was wrong. The audience applauded. Cameras clicked, and I felt my mother's presence somehow, watching from wherever she was. I hope you are proud, Mom, I thought. I hope you can see what I built with what you left me. After the ceremony, Ruth found me in the crowd. She was wearing her Sunday best, a purple dress and matching hat that made her look like royalty. Well, well, well. She pulled me into a hug. Look at you, opening buildings and giving speeches. I could not have done it without you, I said. You saved me that night. She waved a hand. I just provided snacks and legal referrals. You did the hard part. You know that is not true. Ruth smiled, her eyes soft. My sister, she said slowly. She went through something similar. Husband who lied. Courts that did not believe her. Lost everything. I did not know. She made it through. Built herself back up. Became a judge so she could make sure other women got the justice she never had. Ruth dabbed at her eyes. She would have loved you, Vivian. She would have been so proud. I hugged her again, holding on tight. Jessica Lane was there too, of course. Her articles about Claudia and Marcus had won her a journalism award. She was already working on a book about the case. Chapter 1, she told me with a grin. The wedding from hell. Make sure you mention the shrimp, I said. She laughed. Ruth already insisted. As the crowd began to disperse, I found a quiet moment alone with Daniel. We stood on the steps of Grace House, watching the late afternoon sun paint the city gold. You know, he said thoughtfully, a year ago, you were afraid to even open that invitation. I was a different person a year ago. No, he shook his head. You were always this person. You just did not know it yet. I thought about that, about the scared woman who stood in her kitchen, trembling at the sight of Claudia's handwriting, about the girl who grew up believing she was worthless because someone told her she was. That girl was still inside me, somewhere, but she was not running the show anymore. What happens now? Daniel asked. Now we live. I looked up at the banner with my mother's name. We raise our kids. We help other women find their way. We build something good from something terrible. And Claudia? She was serving 8 years. Marcus had taken a plea deal and was cooperating with federal prosecutors. The empire of lies they had built together had crumbled into dust. I do not think about her anymore, I said honestly. She does not deserve space in my head. Daniel pulled me close. That is the best revenge, you know. What is? Being so happy that you forget they exist. I laughed and kissed him softly. When did you get so wise? I married a very smart woman. She rubs off on me. That night, after everyone had gone home and the children were asleep, I sat down and wrote a letter. Not to Claudia or Marcus or anyone else who had hurt me, but to myself, to the girl I used to be. Dear Vivian, I know you are scared. I know you feel alone. I know you think that maybe they are right, that maybe you really are worthless. They are lying. Everything they told you was a lie. You are strong. You are smart. You are worthy of love. And someday, you will prove them all wrong. It will not be easy. You will lose things you thought you could not live without. You will be broken and humiliated and brought to your knees. But you will get back up. You will always get back up. And someday, you will stand in front of a building with your mother's name on it, surrounded by people who love you, holding the children they tried to take from you. And you will be free. Love, Vivian. I folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer. Maybe someday I would read it again. Maybe someday Grace would read it, or Tommy, and understand where they came from and what their mother survived. But for now, it was enough just to have written it, to have named the truth and set it free. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Claudia was in a cell. Marcus was building a case against his former partners. The world was still full of people who hurt others for money and power and control. But I was not one of their victims anymore. I was a survivor. I was a mother. I was exactly who I had always been meant to be. And that, I realized, was the real ending to my story. Not revenge, not punishment, not watching my enemies fall. It was standing here in this quiet moment, knowing that I was finally, irrevocably free. My stepmother ripped my dress in front of 400 guests. She thought she was destroying me, but she was wrong. She was setting me free. And the best revenge? It was not the justice, or the headlines, or the building with my mother's name. It was the peace I gave myself when I finally let them go. Hit that like button, share this story, and subscribe for more tales of karma, power, and redemption. Because respect is earned in silence and returned in thunder. If this story speaks to you, do me a small favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, not for me, for you. So the next time life knocks you down, you will have a story waiting to remind you that getting back up is always possible. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever faced someone who underestimated you? I read every single comment, and your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Share this with a friend who needs to remember her strength. Sometimes a story arrives at exactly the right moment, and if you want more tales of karma, resilience, and redemption, you are in the right place. Now, let us begin. Closing disclaimer. Thank you for staying until the end. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with real-life lessons. Every word was chosen to inspire, empower, and remind you that no matter how dark things get, there is always a path forward. We believe stories have the power to heal, and we are honored that you chose to spend this time with us. Until next time, remember, respect is earned in silence and returned in thunder.